Oh Lord. Again. Again. Nothing new, nothing changed. Same old, same old.
Flashback.
I also predict it's only a matter of time before Lucas decides to leave SM Entertainment because besides his solo endeavors, what else is he supposed to do? SM already furthered the damage and I feel like Lucas is left by himself to pick up the pieces and put his career back together again. There's nothing I can really say. I'm so jaded and so disappointed that this was the decision that came to be. Even if it was Lucas's personal decision, it's not something I agree with. But at the same time, I can't imagine how much the hate towards the rest of NCT would increase if he came back to promoting with WayV and NCT and Super M. Depending on how you look at it, the support he would receive would be great, but the hate would continue to spread because people like it that way and want it to stay that way and keep going.
End of flashback.
Several things have happened over the course of the last 9 months. SM recently opened up official social media accounts for Lucas and his solo activities, and recently, which has been getting more buzz from K-pop fans lately, a multi-part documentary was uploaded on Lucas's YouTube channel. I'm not going to provide an in-depth review of the documentary, and I'm not going to talk about every single little thing showcased and mentioned, but I wanted to give my thoughts on the documentary, or rather the 2 parts that I watched as of the making of this video, and where I currently stand as far as the Lucas situation is concerned. But before I give my thoughts on the documentary, I want to reiterate something, and this is for all of the people in the back with their headphones tuning out every single thing I say. None of the original accusations that were made towards Lucas include any mention of A.C.E. I cannot say the full phrase on YouTube due to restrictions, but anyone who says that Lucas is a perpetrator of A.C.E. is incorrect. I can only assume that people came to this conclusion because there were mistranslations and misinterpretations about the original claims, that people came to this conclusion. I can't stop people from believing that, because for some reason, people still think that he committed serious criminal activities. However, despite what most continue to believe about Lucas, he did not commit any of those things and there is no proof that confirms this whatsoever based on the information that we have about this situation. The accusations are as follows: Lucas is being accused of infidelity, which refers to being unfaithful to one's spouse or significant other in a romantic relationship, allegedly mooching off of his ex for money to buy him lavish and expensive gifts that he allegedly couldn't afford for himself, and lastly, he was accused of gaslighting, which is the practice of manipulating someone psychologically into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. These were the things that Lucas was accused of. Nothing less, nothing more. Now that we've gone over that, let's talk about my thoughts on the documentary. Prior to watching the documentary myself, I was observing what other people were saying about the documentary. When I saw people say that SM and Lucas do not directly talk about the accusations, and only refer to it under the umbrella term the incident, even as someone who voiced support for Lucas, I did not want to watch the documentary. But then I caved in and watched the first 2 parts of the documentary that were uploaded on Saturday and Monday respectively. I was having a conversation about the documentary with one of my friends and here were some of the things that I took away from this documentary. First and foremost, this was no doubt an attempt to humanize Lucas in a way that most people do not in regard to how K-pop idols are treated in the industry. We saw him working out, brushing his teeth, showering, and doing other things while he was on hiatus. Side note, I saw someone say that they believe that these things were not filmed during his hiatus and that they believe it to be a reenactment of him doing these things for the purpose of having footage in the documentary, which I strongly disagree with. Of course, SM had to get permission to film with the people included ahead of time, but I highly doubt this footage is inauthentic. Regardless of when this was filmed or how recent, I hope that it doesn't influence your opinion about this documentary. I cannot relate to the things that Lucas experiences, especially since he is a celebrity who had to publicly deal with these accusations, but as someone who struggles with depression and anxiety, I could sympathize with some of the emotions and feelings he was expressing. I don't relate to his situation whatsoever, but I can understand how he felt. Secondly, I feel like we don't see his full perspective on the issue. I think we only see a fraction of it. I also feel like in some way Lucas is being gaslit himself by his own company, which is a bit ironic considering that was the same thing he was being accused of. But regardless of how he felt, I couldn't ignore some of the frustrations I had with this documentary. The biggest con of this was that both Lucas and SM were beating around the bush and not explicitly addressing the accusations he was facing. It was very vague, and it was this elephant in the room that no one addressed whatsoever. So, because of that, it personally took me out of the experience that I had watching the first 2 parts of the documentary. I feel like where Woojin and 10X Entertainment succeeded with their respective documentary, SM and Lucas failed in my opinion. Despite the satire and unhinged nature of certain parts of the documentary, 10X Entertainment addressed the accusations Woojin was facing. I also thought it was great to see the company's point of view in how they handle cases like this. It wasn't a full glimpse of what the company was doing to protect Woojin, but I still felt that the documentary served its purpose. On the other hand, Lucas's documentary relies way too much on ambiguity, which if one is not careful, will only lead to further speculation and distortion of the truth like what we're seeing even after the first 2 parts were released. I feel like this says more about SM's complacency with how they handle controversy surrounding their artists. And this is part of the reason why Lucas still receives hate to this day. By failing to explicitly explain what the accusations were, what Lucas did, and even how he reacted to the sasaengs he was calling out, which some believe this is what Lucas is apologizing for, it leaves more room for speculation, and brings us further from the truth. I think that while many of the people who support Lucas feel vindicated through this documentary, and his slow return to social media and the public eye as he prepares to make his solo debut, the vague approaches and lack of direct responses to these accusations are what have people divided on their support for Lucas. I hope that some of this explains why some people are expressing uncertainty over their support for Lucas on top of the mixed reactions this documentary is receiving. So, I think those are all of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of his documentary. But I wanted to shift focus onto some of the things that many people are glossing over way too much in my opinion. Throughout my channel, I have been very consistent with my belief that sending death threats and hate comments towards K-pop idols solve absolutely nothing. It brings nothing to the arguments that you are trying to make, and in reality, it takes away from the severity of the issues being discussed. Regardless of how long I've been a K-pop fan, regardless of how long I will continue to be a K-pop fan, and regardless of how long I plan on making videos for this channel, I do not stand behind this type of behavior. I think K-pop stans should know better than to send hate and death threats over someone they don't like. The reason why I am adamant in making this point is because of this: if something happens, and we cannot come back from it, and someone's life ends up being harmed, and a person decides to unalive themselves, then the people who enable this behavior, the people who engage in sending these types of threats, those who are complacent in allowing this type of behavior continue will have no one to blame but themselves. I'm begging you not to send anyone death threats over serious matters. I don't care about Lucas's stage presence. I don't care about his skills as a vocalist, dancer, rapper, and performer. Right now, Lucas is a victim of online harassment and cyberbullying. And some of his relatives were also being threatened with physical harm over these accusations, and that is not okay. This cannot go on any longer, and SM is complacent in not doing anything to protect Lucas and his family. This is why in a previous video, I said I think Lucas should leave SM once his contract expires if it has not been renewed already. I don't see enough people condemning the death threats and hate comments he's receiving. In a separate matter, in my opinion, I feel like trying to explain the truth about Lucas's situation is like casting pearls before swine. There are people who are willing to listen to people clarifying what the actual nature of these accusations are, but then you have people who are not willing to listen and want to keep the hate going like I mentioned previously. And to that I say it's no use in trying to educate a person who is not willing to listen to what you have to say. I can make peace with the people who don't want to support Lucas, especially if they are confused by what's actually going on with him. But I cannot accept the people who send death threats and ostracize anyone who supports Lucas. You could argue that there are people who support Lucas that ostracize those who don't, but I think what separates them is that people can distinguish when people are respectful about their opposition against Lucas, and just being plain rude and disrespectful. If that is the case, and people are not willing to listen, then there's no helping their case. In cases where people want to believe what they want to believe about a person, sometimes, they will believe the absolute worst about an individual, especially someone who they don't like. I think in some cases this can apply here as well. And before I forget, no, it's not Lucas's fault that he is coming back from his hiatus before Seunghan returns from his. I wanted to make a video debunking some of the things that people are saying and about the people who are also tearing Lucas down to lift Seunghan up when both are victims of their separate situations, but I don't see the purpose of doing so because, to be honest, it feels like casting pearls before swine, like I said earlier. But I really hope people can understand how both of their situations are different despite being under the same company and being victims of their company's complacency and potential gaslighting, and also of a malicious takedown of their careers. And lastly, I want to share my thoughts on Lucas's situation after watching the first 2 parts of the documentary and based on the information that we have up until now. I want to continue to support Lucas, but at this point it's really hard to. SM and Lucas continue to be really vague about the situation, and even after the documentary don't address it directly. We've been waiting for the past 3 years for some type of closure to this issue, and the documentary is not enough. They need to take legal action. Because since several people debunked most of the accusations, and provided evidence that proves these sasaengs made up these accusations to make Lucas look bad, then SM needs to take legal action. The original account that made these accusations was also bought on Weibo, and the Twitter account was also removed. But if there is some truth to them, then Lucas and SM should clarify and acknowledge the truth to them. All we know is that he did not commit SA, but even that does not stop the amount of hate and death threats Lucas is receiving. I also want to point out that because of the laws in China and South Korea, Lucas would not have a career if he committed SA, and I would have stopped supporting him a long time ago if that were the case. While I am frustrated with how the documentary was done due to the vagueness on both Lucas and SM's part, I also cannot ignore all of the harassment online that Lucas and his relatives have been receiving. And not only that, one of the sasaengs, who is linked to Lucas's situation, has set their sights on stalking NCT Wish, the new Japanese-based unit in NCT, that also has members who are minors, which is very creepy. But I mean, this is the same grown woman who stalked Mark when he was in high school. And the woman who bribed the staff to sit next to Yan Yan on the plane. NCT in general has had ongoing issues with sasaengs, and not just FTTM, but others as well. And SM being complacent and not reprimanding these stalkers isn't helping their case and makes them look bad. And it's also for those reasons that even though I continue to support Lucas, I have become disillusioned by the current state of K-pop and fandom culture. With that being said, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You are welcome to share your thoughts on this situation as well, and any other information you might have. But be aware that I have the comments restricted and will continue to do so for the time being. Failure to be respectful, and you will be blocked from my channel. I hope you have a wonderful day, take care of yourselves, and please stay safe.